that I knew from El Paso who now live in Chicago. I see Lisa and TJ and Cindy and Todd and others. The fact that you still speak to me and much less would come up and welcome us to your new adopted hometown is so special to me and connects us to all of the work that we did together in the years before. Everyone else who's hosted us and importantly, who helped us to be where we are right now. So many of you pitched in the Texas Senate race. You sent money, you picked up and left and moved to Texas and knocked on doors and brought people into our democracy and into the greatest grassroots effort our state had ever seen. So I want to thank all of you for giving us a chance to be here in the first place. And as Lou said, Amy is the real force and factor in this campaign. And it's the first time that she's had the ability to join me on the road in Iowa. It was my 5th visit to the state, but it was her first. And to be able to see all of this through her eyes, the people that we're meeting, the urgency that they feel right now really reminded me why it is that we're doing this in the first place. And I'm also incredibly impressed by everything that she's doing to keep this family together. I heard her on the phone with my mom, with her mom, with the various babysitters, making sure that Ulysses and Molly and Henry got to their games and to their practices, got to their friends' birthday parties, and is there to support them emotionally at the end of the day. We were talking to our youngest, Henry, on Sunday night, last night, and we were trying to remind him why we're doing this, why both of his parents are not with him this night, but are out on the road in Iowa. And at the end of the conversation, Henry said, "So, Dad, if you win, then we're all going to be in El Paso together, right?" And I said, poor kid, he's 8 years old, doesn't know how this works. No, son, if we win, we're all going to be in Washington, D.C. together. But what I realized, as he explained to me, was that one of the reasons that we're doing this, to make sure that we confront the challenge of climate change before it is too late. He's internalized some of what I told him, look, these storms that we're seeing, the floods in the state that we just left, the 58 inches of rain in Houston, Texas, the fires in California, the record droughts that we're seeing in our part of Texas, that's all going to pale in comparison to what we will see down the road if we don't make the most out of this moment that we have right now. Not as Democrats or Republicans, but together as Americans. And I told them, incidentally, where we call home El Paso, Texas, it will no longer be able to support human life. Way to blow an 8-year-old's mind, but wanted to make sure that I gave him the truth. And so he was telling me, look, I understand why you're doing this. You want to make sure that we're going to be able to live in El Paso down the road. And he understands this sacrifice that all of us are making right now. And I love the fact we were in Clinton, Iowa this morning. Who comes out to a town hall at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning? More than 100 people did. And their urgency around these issues of climate, or the fact that farmers in that state are bearing the brunt of this president's disastrous trade wars and the tariffs that are closing down markets they have spent an entire lifetime trying to open up. And the fact that they're no longer going to be able to keep those farms or pass it on to their Henry or Molly or Ulysses. They're going to show up and make sure that they have a chance to vet those candidates who want to hold this position of public trust. School teachers who wonder why they're working a second or a third job just to make ends meet. When we want them focused on only one job, unlocking that child's lifelong love of learning, after which that kid is unstoppable, this country is unbeatable. They asked, why are we putting kids in cages at the US-Mexico border and deporting their parents back from the very countries from which they fled? Why are there millions living in the shadows right now, working the toughest jobs, who, if we free them from any fear of deportation, will be able to contribute to the full potential, not just of their own family, but this country's greatness? You would think with 24, maybe 25 candidates in this race, they would be exhausted. But they are turning out in record numbers because they understand as well as you do, as well as we do, that this is a defining moment of truth for our country. And they know that they will face the judgment of their kids, just like Amy and I fear the judgment of ours. Given the chance to do what we can, what will we have accomplished? And our work is really cut out for us because we have a president who, though this country was already very polarized, seeks to divide us every single day, to make us afraid or to keep us apart or angry at one another. This democracy, so badly damaged and compromised, further undermined by a president who will stop at nothing to maintain this hold on power. And yet it is that very democracy that we need, the greatest mechanism humankind has ever devised to call forth the potential and promise of a people to meet these challenges. And that's why I think we are uniquely prepared, not just to secure the nomination of our party, not only to defeat Donald Trump in 2020, as important as that is, but to bring this country together again in 2021 around these incredibly significant challenges, to make sure that we achieve our priorities. Everything that I've been about in my life has been about bringing people in and making sure that this democracy works for all. Starting a small technology company in El Paso, Texas, one of the poorest urban counties in the United States of America. Maybe the last place that you'd expect to find a business like that. But we knew that there was so much talent in our community that was just awaiting a channel to express itself. We took a chance, and they produced for us and for the community. Serving on the city council, not as a Republican or as a Democrat, but as an El Pasoan, balancing that budget every single one of the 6 years that I served, and then taking on the tough fights, like in 2009, extending health care benefits to the same-sex partners of city employees, regardless of the political consequences. And one of the forcing factors in my service was holding a town hall meeting every single week for those 6 years, listening to my constituents, their ideas, their concerns, their neighbor's dog who was barking last night and kept them up, knowing full well there was nothing I could do about it. But always reminding me who it is I serve, to whom I am accountable. And we brought that same service to the United States Congress, also for 6 years, every day of it in the minority. But I knew that I had to deliver. We expanded mental health care access for veterans, saving lives at a time of suicide crisis amongst veterans. Protected public lands at a time that this president is diminishing the size of our national monuments. And investing in our shared connection with Mexico because of the jobs and the trade and the security and the quality of life that we have in the largest binational community in the Western Hemisphere. And then this Senate campaign that so many of you joined us on. We went to each one of the 254 counties of Texas. Did not matter how big and reliably blue, we were not going to take you for granted. We were going to show up and listen to you. It didn't matter how rural or small or Republican, we weren't going to write you off either. We were going to show up. I was just talking to somebody who said that her two watchwords in this election and for our democracy are respect and fairness. And fundamental to respect is showing up in the first place and understanding what somebody is experiencing and bringing their stories into the campaign that you run and the service that you provide. I was reminded of that when we went to Archer County, the far north part of the state, home to Larry McMurtry, author of Lonesome Dove and The Last Picture Show. As we're walking into Mern's Cafe to have a town hall meeting with the 12 people who have showed up there, the 20 people, if you count the 8 innocents who were eating breakfast when we walked in, this gentleman stops me and he pulls out a black and white photo from a manila envelope. And he says, this is a picture of the last Senate candidate from either party to show up in Archer County. It was 1948, and it was Congressman Lyndon Baines Johnson. He dropped out of the sky in a helicopter, landed on the Archer County courthouse lawn, walked over to the American Legion Hall, and then met and listened to the people that he hoped to represent and serve in the Senate before he asked for their vote. And he said, my dad, pictured with LBJ in this photograph, and I have lived here my entire life, and you're the first candidate from either party to show up since then. It is because of that willingness to show up, to listen, to learn, but also with the courage of our convictions, talking about in Texas, healthcare being universal, high quality for primary mental health care, but also meaning that every woman makes her own decisions about her own body and has access to the care. In our proud gun-owning state, talking about the fact that we will lose nearly 40,000 of our fellow Americans to gun violence unless we change course, adopt universal background checks, close all those loopholes, stop selling weapons of war into our communities, and stop people before they harm themselves or someone else. Talking about immigration reform, not just on the border, but in the smallest communities who understand that their very vitality and future is predicated on the ability to welcome asylum seekers and refugees and immigrants from the world over. And at the end of the day, without taking a single dime from a single political action committee, we won more votes than any Democrat in the history of the state of Texas. We won independence for the first time in decades. 500,000 Republicans voted for a Republican for governor and voted for Beto O'Rourke for Senate on the same ballot because we show up for everyone, and include them in the solutions to our challenges. They show up for us as well. Young voter turnout up 500% in early voting on that same election. And look, though we fell a little bit short to Ted Cruz on that night, 2.6% to be precise. We were part of something absolutely extraordinary and transformational for Texas, a state that had been 50th in voter turnout, not by accident, but by design, really showed up. And 2 new members of Congress, both Democrats replacing Republicans, helped to flip the House of Representatives. 17 African-American women won judicial elections in Harris County, changing the face of criminal justice in our country's most diverse community. And Texas, as Ambassador Sussman said, is now in play. Those 38 electoral college votes, which have not really meaningfully been expressed since 1976, are up for the competition. And uniquely, there is one candidate, one campaign, and one movement that can secure them and make sure that we fulfill the potential and the promise of this country. Your contributions tonight, your willingness to be part of this movement, to give us a chance to distinguish ourselves in this incredibly extraordinary field of candidates, is going to help us make the difference, not just in the Democratic Party, but for the United States of America, not only to defeat Donald Trump, but to bring us together again, to make sure that forever after we are defined not by our fears or by our differences, but by the aspirations and ambitions that we hold in common and this great democracy that will allow us to achieve them. Thank you for being part of this here tonight. We are grateful. That's it.